Hello everyone, this is Tyler. It is Friday here, and it's almost the end of February, just a week or two left, so yeah, it's crazy. February always feels quicker than January. Okay, I want to discuss something with you guys, and this is something I wouldn't usually discuss, but for me, I think it's important being a foreign person living abroad. And I think it's especially relevant for those guys out there who are considering marriage and dating in these important matters. Okay, I myself have dated a bit living abroad, and I'll say that I've had different experiences depending on the country. I've lived in USA and Chile, Estonia, and Russia. And each country, of course, has some distinctive differences, and there, of course, are similarities, especially when you're looking at dating, and humans definitely share characteristics no matter the country. Okay, so my my mindset with dating and when one is living foreign or living abroad is that one first should put their own well-being in front first and foremost, and this is especially important for someone who's doesn't have as much money and is still trying to develop themselves career wise. It's very, very important. Now, obviously, as people progress in their situation improves, or perhaps they've already came with a very good situation, and at which case they can definitely optimize that for dating in that particular country. Now, keep in mind though that when you're approaching these affairs, you have to really think about what you're desiring and how something's going to play out, because this is very important. There's that whole there's a time and cost effect someone has, or analyst someone has to take into account and be astute with, and they have to just be mindful of the direction they're going. And I have had at least one official girlfriend living internationally, and I've dated some other girls also. But one thing that I noticed is that it's very difficult if you don't have intentions to live long term somewhere. It's maybe better in these cases not to even date or to start a relationship, because that time could essentially be used for something more important, in which case you sacrifice those all that time, and also you could have met, it could have been someone else that you would have met down the road. You also put energy into a relationship, and you can become very emotionally attached, and I think after a while it kind of scars people when they go from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, and it's very destructive, honestly, I think, on both men and women. And this is a problem in our society now, that people view each other as so disposable. There's no concept of someone as a person. It's what benefit do they offer, and that's the biggest issue nowadays with the dating scene. When I lived in Chile, I saw actually a relatively similar mindset to when I lived in USA, actually. Now, of course, there were Latin aspects or Chilean aspects that played into the relationships, but of course, I mean, when you look at Chile and how the West or the U.S. had a lot of impact on that country in the past few decades, it would make sense. And this is something to be aware of, because there's guys out there who travel and they have the intention to date abroad or to and move, just simply because they're trying to date or find a wife or something, and they maybe don't think that the countries they're choosing are exactly that much different culturally speaking than the U.S. Or at least the values and what people hold important is not different than the U.S. And that's really important someone understands that, because if you're going to a society that has a relatively low living standard or index, it's going to be it really isn't that optimal to do something like that, and then just simply for dating, because you're not really necessarily getting much either out of the dating. And these are definitely issues that I had thought of prior, or these are things I've thought about as I've lived in more places and traveled abroad. Now, there are a few countries where the the dating or the relationships and how it's approached very much goes hand in hand with the lifestyle. In countries like this would be like Ukraine or Russia. These countries have such a mindset, or how the relationships go about are definitely very much an impact of how the society goes. So if you're not really that instinct or that fond of that society, it's probably going to have like an impact on your relationship and kind of how you perceive matters in this sort of thing. Because for example, I lived in Russia, and just like many Americans, there's a lot of nationalists actually in Russia. I mean, this is kind of a parallel that these two countries share. You see in these major empire societies, there's these heavy nationalist movements that are very common, and you see both this in Russia and in the U.S. Now, it's not a negative thing. People might hear nationalism and get kind of the wrong impression, but this isn't bad, honestly. There's situations where it could be, but it actually can be very refreshing. It adds, I mean, you really get to experience that culture from like a first-hand perspective. That it's kind of like what I was just saying before, that when you go somewhere that's been very influenced by the Western system or the U.S., it's going to very much impact how you're how the person that you're dating, the partner, and how things are playing out. There's probably going to be a lot of influence there. And likewise, if you go somewhere that's quite different, that's also probably going to make an impact on the dating and this sort of thing. So these are just things you have to take into account when you're a foreign person. Like, I'm a foreign guy. When I go to a country, I know I don't have a family there. I don't have my parents or other siblings or extended relatives. If I need some backup, if I need some favors or whatever, none of this is there. So this is something I have to be aware of when I'm going to these countries, that I have to be like first and foremost concerned about my well-being, because if your well-being's not in place, nothing else really matters. And economics especially are one thing that guys have to understand. When you go to Eastern Europe, you as a foreign guy is expected to produce. I mean, when it comes to relationships, I mean, you're not going to get a free pass. The ladies of these societies may have standards for their domestic guys. Often these standards are quite different than the standards of foreign guys. And this is one thing that people often don't understand. Especially, like I said, if you come from first world society, countries like USA or Canada, Germany, Australia. You go to their countries and they're going to expect a certain standard that's elevated above what they'd expect of their own guys. And this is this could be a real shocker for someone if they aren't used to this and are under the assumption that they can just be like the guy in those countries. Now, the other thing is you see many guys that are meeting these young women on dating apps or on online platforms, these matchmaking services. And my feeling on this is kind of like, okay, I think if a guy's going and living somewhere long term, um, this is a possibility they could pursue this, and they can make a bid at trying to date in that domestic market this way. But you can meet people in person. I mean, you can use it like as kind of a sidekick also, like it just to get more options. But you can meet people in person. I met my ex girlfriend in face to face situation. It wasn't like I had used a dating app and I met many people, but I didn't meet my girlfriend through there. And also, so many guys will meet like these girls and they don't have intention to live there long term. They may actually try to find a wife there, a spouse, and then take them back. And this isn't the right mindset. Like, if you want to do that, you'd be better off, honestly, probably either pursuing girls or women in your domestic market or moving to this country, because people don't understand that the girl's kind of a product or a woman of their ecosystem they're living in, and they're not just going to retain a lot of those values when they go somewhere else. And that's kind of the perspective of many of these guys. Oh, my whatever, my Svetlana is going to go to this country and be just like how she is here in Russia or in Ukraine. And this is often not the case. They conform, they change to the society as a whole. And this is so critical people understand this. I didn't really have a lot of interest actually in dating like Eastern Europeans actually until recently. It was actually a more chance situation because, see, I lived in Chicago, and in Chicago there's a lot of you can find foreign people from any country, every single country in the world. And I had met some Eastern Europeans in Chicago and had very good interaction, and some of these people then became friends, and I still talk to some of these people today, 4 or 5 years later. And the key here is that I met these people at home. I was in Chicago, and I had a really good like mindset, or my perspective on these people was quite positive. So I was like, maybe I should go to Eastern Europe, and that's kind of what started for me. But initially, it was very much just based on the traveling aspect and just doing some cool like skiing and sightseeing. It wasn't based on the mindset that I was going to live there, and that played a role also. And I wasn't like going there to pursue like dating. I was going there to have a vacation, and that is important. People understand that, because when you go somewhere with intention to simply for dating, often guys like this don't last long term in these countries. So this is kind of my thoughts for today, Friday, and I hope everyone has a good weekend.